It's been reported that the rematch between Zhilei Zhang and Joyce is set to take place on September 2nd at the OVO Arena in Wembley in London. Now, this isn't really much of a secret or a surprise. This fight was pretty much always on the cards from very shortly after the first fight, and I figured we'd get some early discussion in. You guys know how I'm not really a massive fan of immediate rematches. However, I do make some exceptions. I'm not a massive fan of immediate rematches a lot of the time when there's a title on the line, just because it locks up the division, it kind of slows things down, gets in the way of potential unifications and undisputed fights, which already seem to happen too infrequently, unfortunately. And there are other cases where immediate rematches just aren't necessary, where someone is comprehensively beaten. And I say I make exceptions, but obviously that was the case in the first fight between these two, where Zhang really just beat up Joyce. But this, maybe Joyce can make some tactical adjustments. I don't think he was really ever let into the fight. So it wasn't like we saw Zhang have to really weather a storm. And I'm not trying to discredit his win. Zhilei Zhang really deserves all the credit in the world for that win, because it was his class, it was his ability that shut Joyce out. It would just be interesting to see if Joyce can get some momentum and how Zhang potentially deals with it. Particularly because I've actually outlined this in the pre-fight video I did for that fight, and I've spoken about it regarding Joyce many times, is that he's a fighter who he needs momentum. If you allow him to get that momentum, he's very difficult to beat. However, if you get him under manners from early on, which Zhang did, he's a lot more manageable, and dare I say easy, much easier. Like, Zhang didn't really struggle that much in the first fight, because he just showed that he had really some real class. You know, Zhang is a kind of fighter who he doesn't do. He has some quite glaring weaknesses, but what he does well, he does very well. He's got like a very narrow but refined set of ability, predominantly counter-punching while he's on the front foot, like super sharp. For a big man who's not particularly quick, his counters are sharp and his accuracy was very good, and he's got some real good eyes and some good shot selection, which Joyce tasted bitterly. But yeah, this fight, Joyce doesn't really have anywhere else to go, so it kind of makes sense that he goes back in there and tries to exercise some demons and reassess, because if he kind of concedes and fights someone else, it's like a massive step backwards, almost like starting from scratch. However, if he goes back in against Zhang, and even if he gives a much better account of himself, if it's still a defeat, it's going to be difficult. But if he goes in there, looks good, is competitive, maybe hurts Zhang, knocks Zhang down, people might give him the benefit of the doubt, saying, okay, Joyce is still a player. Even though he loses to Zhang, he's still a player. He probably had an off night the first time around, but he's a bit closer the second time. But then if he, still going to be a difficult situation, but then if he wins and beats Zhang, it's almost like he regains that momentum and he's back to where he was before, and people just write it off and say, oh, you know, Zhang caught him off, caught him cold on an off night. That being said, though, in practicality, I'd be pretty confident that Zhang wins again. It would just be interesting to see, does Joyce make the necessary adjustments, or can he make it more competitive? But there's one thing I like about Zhang more than his skills, because, you know, he's quite enjoying to watch, I'll say that. I like Zhang's confidence. He's someone who clearly backs himself. He has like a kind of macho streak where virtually speaks no English, and when he attempts to, you have no idea what he says. But he's got a certain swagger about him. He's clearly very confident, backs himself a lot. You know, for 40 years old, traveling, you know, fighting in the Middle East, fighting in the States, fighting in the UK, has gloves, will travel. You can't argue with that. So I like Zhang's personality, but I like his confidence. I'm just wondering if, could that confidence boil over a little bit? and we maybe see some complacency. Be interesting to see. But there's still a little while until this fight takes place. I think just under 3 months. But some early discussions, some early questions to maybe ask this about this fight in the lead up. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you like this fight? And who are you picking? Do you think it will be repeat or revenge? Leave it down below. I'll get back to you. But for now, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next video.